But the basics of the diligence that you go into when you're looking at any company, and particularly private, is you look at the set of financial statements, but then you go a couple steps, beyond that. So you definitely want to look at.
Hello, friends. Today we're here with a dear friend of mine, Tyler. Tyler is many things, but I'll allow you to introduce yourself, Ty.
Sure. Tyler Burke. I am the current owner of a tree care company located in Hamilton. I've got an interesting story of how I actually ended up there. But James and I have been friends for a very long time. We went to university together. We're about to start a boys' weekend with our good buddy Sam. I was best man at Jamie's wedding, and thrilled to be here. It's my first podcast, and it's gonna be fun.
Okay, goodbye training wheels. So here we go. So I think one thing that jumps out, Ty, obviously we've been friends for a long time. I think you have one of the most unique career pivots that I've got to witness.
Yes.
So talk to me about what was it like working for a hedge fund,
Sure.
and then saying, you know what, this is not for me, and then pivoting to end up buying a business, now running a business.
Sure.
And just walk me through everything, from like what made that decision, what was, and walk me through it.
Yeah, it's funny. My first hedge fund that I worked for is actually in this building currently. So was getting lunch in this area. I know this area pretty intimately. I don't know what got me interested in hedge funds or really in finance. I think investing was always something that I found interesting. If you're familiar with the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that was like a book that was given to me at a pretty young age. And the idea of being able to make money passively and investing and assets and liabilities and income expenses, like, I don't know, it's just something about it that I found pretty interesting. And all the smartest friends that I knew were in finance, and I just kind of gravitated towards it. I was fortunate enough to get picked by two gentlemen, Zabe Magic and Len Kipp, Maple Rock Capital Partners, great big hedge fund, at least in the context of Canadian hedge funds. And loved it. It was a lot, particularly at that place. Zabe has extremely high standards. The pace was crazy, but in terms of being an analytical person and wanting to learn about companies, it was awesome. It was interesting. I learned a lot, but it's hard to say what exactly drove me to be considering something else. I definitely didn't like having a boss. Didn't like having to be somewhere at a certain time and have to leave at a certain time. Like, I'm an extremely independent person. I value autonomy. I value, being able to do things my own way. And, this concept of entrepreneurship was always something that was in the back of my mind, but I was never going to be the guy that was going to go out and start something from scratch. I view that as, really risky. I have the utmost respect for people that can create something from scratch. I just think it's really hard. It's not really my personality. And I stumbled into this entrepreneurship through acquisition. They call it ETA. It's the idea of buying an existing business that has an existing customer list, an existing cash flow stream, existing customer base, and then just kind of retooling it.
So that is so interesting to me because I remember, have been friends this whole journey, and I thought it was crazy. To me, it seems so much riskier to buy a business than to start a business.
Sure.
And we had this.
It's different. Yeah.
It's different. So you're saying, hey, I'd rather buy a business, and I'm saying I'd rather start a business. So let's talk about that for a second. But let's go back to that. Why, in your mind, did it feel more comfortable or more suited to you to buy?
Sure. I think it depends how you define risk. Risk for me is, what are the odds that I'm going to lose my investment permanently? Right. For me, it's like, what are my odds of permanent capital impairment or permanent capital loss? And when you frame it through that lens, a startup, particularly a startup that doesn't have product market fit and is something that's brand new, like you're either entering a new industry or you're trying to create something from scratch, is, in my mind, extremely risky, because you could go out, raise a bunch of capital or pour a bunch of money into the venture, be it 50 grand or, 50 million. You've got to fight tooth and nail to achieve product market fit, to acquire a bunch of customers. You've got to actually sink a bunch of capital into either coming up with a product or the service. And the whole time you're wondering, oh my God, am I going to be able to make payroll? And you're looking at your bank account, and every day it goes down. And we can talk about, my whole search process, how I, quit my job, and I was draining my bank account every single day. And I got the sense of like, you're trying to start something from scratch, and it's just hard. For me, it was just hard, and I knew that wasn't what I was going to do. And I'm not creative enough to come up with a new product or a new service. I viewed buying a plumbing business or an electrical business, or in my case, like a tree care business, as just less risky because it's never going to go away. It's not likely to be disintermediated by technology. Amazon's not going to come in and, create a new tree care, robot or something, or at least we're a long time away from that. So it was about trying to come into an old school industry that was Lindy, that's been around for a long time, the odds of it being around for a long time. And my only goal is to get it to a point where, I'm free and clear of all the debt that I used to borrow and put on the business. And then once I'm free and clear of that, then I'm golden, right? Then it's just a cash flow stream that I can kind of sit back and allocate how I see fit. So I think, risk it just depends on how you view it. It depends on how you define it. For me, it's my risk of permanent capital loss in a tree care business is less than trying to go out and create like another Tesla or something.
Right.
And I'd say my view of entrepreneurship is a little bit simpler than I think the traditional view. Like the traditional view, when people think of entrepreneurship, they think of Elon Musk, they think of Steve Jobs, they think of Mark Zuckerberg, like these guys that go out and raise a whole bunch of money.
Do they?
Like,
they don't think of
so.
like the restaurant owner or the convenience store owner?
I don't think so. I do. And I think maybe you do. Like that, I think like we go back to Laurier, like James and I graduated from Wilfrid Laurier. And in the first year, you're supposed to come up with this thing called new venture. And, you must create something new. Yeah. We were TAs, and like we would have to shoot some of these poor students' ideas down because it's like, that's already around. Like the amount of pressure that is already on, an entrepreneur, and now you got to create a whole new idea. It's just like, well, why not just go do something that's already been proven and just do it a little bit better?
Totally.
Right? Like for me, the entrepreneur isn't Steve Jobs. The entrepreneur is, the mother or the father that gets home and sees their son's dance or like their kid's dance recital, or makes every single soccer practice and takes 2 or 3 vacations with their family. Like for me, that's the entrepreneur that I want to model myself off of. And it was, for me, it was an easy decision. And the search process just reinforced that. Like I could never start something from scratch.
So, when going back to the search, because the search to me is so fascinating. Well, there's a lot of things about it that's fascinating. There's the fascinating thing of going to your yard and seeing all the bucket trucks and seeing the equipment. I'm like, you own this?
Yeah.
It's so much machine, so much more.
It's not anything that I'm not good at it.
Like
we'll talk about it, but
both would struggle with chainsaws and that. That's fine.
And plenty of stories, like the one of the first job sites I was on, because purchased the company, and then you're deeply insecure about whether or not these guys will accept you because you're just like a young 30-year-old finance guy. Like I don't know, up from down from a chainsaw or from trees or anything like that. And so the only thing I know how to do is to work hard, but. Steven, who's our most, technical foreman, he's, just grab that chainsaw and just kind of nip that limb and we'll be out of here. And I'm like, so I go over, look at the chainsaw. I'm like, fuck, excuse me. I don't know how to start this thing. Like I'm ripping on it. And like, he's like, you got to use the choke. And I'm like, what the hell? What's the choke? Like, so I walk over like, okay, I got to be honest with you, Steve. I don't know how to start this chainsaw. Like you're gonna have to show me. And he looks at me and he's just like so polite about it. He's like, you bought a tree care company. You don't know how to start a chainsaw. I was like, yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah. And the story got around in the yard, but you got to be humble about that sort of stuff.
You have to.
Yeah.
And you know what? The owner or the CEO or the person steering the ship doesn't need to be the best with the chainsaw. No. You need to identify people that are good with the chainsaw.
Yeah. I mean, the world I like to say that I occupy is, if you picture a Venn diagram, there's guys men and women in pickup trucks, people in pickup trucks, and then there's people that occupy spreadsheets, and I sit in the middle of that.
Got it.
And I'm only 1 year in, but so far so good. But that's the space I try to occupy.
So I just want to keep going back to the purchase decision, because to me, I keep going back to, it seems so much more intimidating to me to buy a business, because I don't have the background that you had evaluating businesses day in, day out to invest them.
Sure.
Public market, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So without numbers and all that, like what are the key things you're looking at what is buffer? What is margin of safety?
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking at to say, I see this line item and I know
Mm-hmm.
if I do X, I can improve that by this amount of upside.
Sure.
How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to have a good background in being able to evaluate companies. Public is different than private, but you know the basics of the diligence that you go into when you're looking at any company, and particularly private, is you look at the set of financial statements, but then you go a couple steps, beyond that. So you definitely want to look at history, look at the stability of the business. Like you're going to be pouring your entire financial savings. You're going to be personally guaranteeing debt. Stability matters, like the ability to pay down the loan. Like when you talk about risk, my biggest risk is the business folding, and then I've got a bunch of money hung around my neck for the rest of my life because I personally guaranteed it. So the odds are, the exercise was, am I able to get to the other side?
Sure.
Like, can this pay down? If I do nothing to this business based on how it's been run for the last 73 years, and based on the debt that I put on the business, am I likely to reach that other side? So that was kind of like the starting point. And when you can answer that comfortably, now you can start thinking, okay, what about the upside? And the upside is just, you're looking at, in Beswick's case, we had no real pricing strategy. I bet you we haven't raised prices in a really long time. I mean, we were a fully pen and paper business up until last Friday, I'm happy to say. So we had no real defined pricing strategy. We had no preventative maintenance schedule. So we were spending all this money on repairing the equipment, but we weren't being proactive in, taking in and have the oil changed. So I assumed you could take a little bit out of there. So you just try to create a picture where, I can get through the other side if I do nothing. If I just kind of run it as it's supposed to be run, or run it as how it has been run. And then everything upside is just kind of gravy. And then you ask yourself, okay, well, what are the odds that I can actually execute on that? And in my case, we were fully pen and paper. We had no preventative maintenance program. The culture wasn't great. We really never had team meetings or health and safety meetings. So it was more just, framing your starting point and then asking yourself, okay, what are the odds that I can actually execute on the upside?
So when you ultimately decided to buy this particular business,
Yep.
Did you map out a worst case, probable case, best case?
My diligence was light.
What does that mean?
My diligence was light. So I was midway through the search. I had a failed deal. So I quit my job at, in finance, and then I started what's called a search. And a search is just basically you try to call on small business owners and send them letters, send them emails, basically asking, hey, I'm so-and-so, this is my situation. I'm looking to purchase a company. I'm just a regular dude. Would you be interested in having a conversation?
Sure.
And you do that over and over and over again, and
Sure.
and you just have these conversations, and it's a lot like speed dating, and you just do your best until you find the right fit. I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
Yeah, no, the question was, you said your due diligence was light.
My due diligence was light, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was, that whole process I found to be emotionally taxing. Every day you're draining your bank account. You feel trapped. Oh my God, is this ever going to work? Like you're just getting rejected. I had a deal break kind of on the 1 yard line. I had it all buttoned up, had, lots of money tied up in the deal. But at the last minute, you get some disclosure that requires you to just walk away.
You had to pull the trigger.
Just had to pull the trigger. So that was, a huge chunk of not a huge chunk, but a chunk of your savings. And you're like, dang, like I got to start over again. So for me, it was I just wanted to get in the game, and I just wanted to move on with my life. And so you talk about lessons, it's a lesson. Like, there's always the next step back.
So what's the lesson for someone who's not going out to buy a business? Let's make that what's the life lesson out of that?
The life lesson, I think there's always a next at bat. I think
there's always
another deal. There's always
Okay.
a next at bat.
Okay.
Like, and as long as you have that mentality, which is a shame because I have a sports background, but if you think about it in like football or like baseball, like there's always another at bat. There's always another down. It's like you're kind of in the middle of a lake and someone throws you a life raft and you're like, hey, I'll just grab that. I'll just take that. Or like I'll buy, I'll do this. And like, I want to be clear. I don't regret it, but certainly if I were to do it over again, there are aspects of the deal that I would have diligenced further. There are aspects of the whole
aspects of the deal that you concluded.
Correct, on Beswick. Correct.
So there's aspects where you maybe let inertia carry you over the finish line.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And you live and you learn.
And that's a common thing in deal making is you get so far along into the process.
Yeah.
You fall in love with the company.
Yeah.
You really, you know,
get emotionally
you get
invested.
emotional. I was just going to say, in an investment decision, you want to do your best to, it's just a business.
Yes.
It's just a cash flow stream.
Sure.
You know, and you don't want to get emotional about it, but I'm very forgiving of myself just because it was a very unique situation. Like I said, no regrets, but yeah, if you know, the lesson is try to be unemotional about it as possible, but it's different when you're an unfunded searcher, funding everything off your own balance sheet.
Totally.
You know, you're paying rent, you know, all your friends' lives are like on, you know, ludicrous mode. Like they're flying by you and you're feeling like, I gotta do something here. It's been like 8 or 9 months. Like I have nothing to show for it. You know, you catch up with old buddies and it's like, yep, still looking, still looking. And you feel like you got nothing to show for it. So you just kind of like, I'll do it. It's working out. Don't get me wrong. But the diligence was light. I concluded it really quickly, knowing only a handful of things, and we're executing on them, and it's all working out. But for sure, I missed some stuff. But you're never gonna get everything.
So you know what? I think that's great insight, and I love how you kind of spun that into a life lesson of there's always another at bat. And I can totally relate to that inertia feeling beyond just in business. You know. It's so easy to just fall into the trap that I got to keep moving forward.
You're vested, yeah.
But I think that I think I want to challenge that idea though, because sometimes you just have to make a decision and figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
Like you can never analyze a situation perfectly. So there's a trade-off between light due diligence, getting the deal done, versus analysis paralysis and never doing a deal.
100%. So a fantastic point, because it was my second finance job that I left. You know, there was no way I was going to be able to come back to the industry, at least at that level. You know, and you know, because someone's looking at you and going, "Well, you've left twice. Like, I'm not going to bring you back." Right. So the bridges were burned, and so to speak. Anyways, at least that's kind of how I mentally framed it. But yeah, I mean, you live and learn. Like, there's always another at bat. Like, there's always another deal. You know, you just got to have that abundance mentality. But when you're in that mode and you feel that pressure, it's different. It's different.
What has been another revelation or something you've learned? Let's talk about back that Venn diagram.
Yeah.
So most of your life when we were friends, you lived in the finance part of the Venn diagram.
Correct.
Now I get to see you in the overlap part when we talk about your, men and women in trucks part that overlaps with you as the office manager running the business. Talk to me about the part of the Venn diagram where it's, more something that's been outside your comfort zone. What have you learned from the time in the yard, on site?
Yeah. I think people respect simplicity, honesty, and transparency, particularly in the trades. I, again, was super insecure coming in and being like, oh my gosh, like, are these people you don't want to be respected. Eventually you want to be respected, but you want to be accepted.
Yeah. Cool.
Especially when you're the youngest guy there and you're trying to run a meeting and it's like, it's been a unique year full of growth, but I find people, management's been something that's been a struggle of mine because I'm considering myself an outgoing introvert. So having to manage people, having to manage expectations and hold people accountable, like that's been a challenge, but I find openness, transparency, and honesty and having a principled approach on that side of the aisle has been a good learning lesson for sure. I think people respect that.
So we're here now. You talked about how the intended goal here is to make this a passive vehicle, to be not emotional about it. Obviously I love watching you build this business, and we can relate on so many levels. Talk to me about where you are now. How do you go from being the operator, Tyler Burke, the tree care business operator, to Beswick is one of these companies that I own that run themselves or are run by a capable team? Yeah,
I think size is important, right? And I wrote that in kind of my year in review. Getting big is essential to that. You're in this. I'm in what's called owner's hell right now, which is it's somewhere between. It's written about I mean, but I read and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I'm totally in owner's hell right now. It's between 2 and 5 million in revenue because, you know, you're big enough where things like marketing, things like HR, that matters because you're a large enough enterprise where it's like you need to be marketing and you need to be building culture. And so that's important. But at the same time, you just can't afford to like bring in a CMO, or you can't afford to have like a controller. And so you're super scrappy and every day's a knife fight. And you're wearing all these different hats and you're getting pulled in all these different directions because it's what's required of you. Right. If you know, you speak about lessons, it's like, wow, like nothing gets done unless you're the one driving it. Right. It's just, you know, humans like to just kind of, you know, enjoy what they've got now, and nothing's going to get done unless you're driving it. And so you've got to be wearing all these different hats. So getting out of owner's hell is key. And that just means getting big. So that means hiring and acquiring the best talent. That's my focus right now is getting the best talent, getting the right talent in the seats. Certainly focusing on lead generation and sales, making sure that we have enough customers to get us through the year, and where we can price our services at a level that makes sense for us to be able to reinvest back in the business and you know, get that CMO or get that personnel. But yeah, from 2 to 5, it's going to be a grind. And I'm in it now, but it's phenomenal learning lessons.
Totally.
Like, you know, you read about all this stuff and you're like, you know, during the search or even before that, before you make the decision, you're like, it's going to be hard. Like it's a knife fight. Like you're going to be pushed. You know, they talk about the 18-month hump where, you know, the fetal position, they call it, where one night you'll be in the bathroom in a fetal position crying because it's just so hard. And you're like, what have I done with my life? And you've got all this personally guaranteed debt. And am I going to make it through this? And I've had 1 or 2 of those, and it's just got to keep going. You know, you just got to keep going.
I love it. Well, I love thanks for sharing that story.
Sure.
You know, I love to hear the condensed version that I got to see over 5 years.
Yeah.
And so when you really summarize it, I got to say, man, I'm so impressed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On the business. Congratulations on all your Google reviews. Your
That's right.
How many are we at? How many, what's the stars rather?
4.7 stars, 223 reviews. We started 4.4 and 94 reviews. We're second in our service areas. We're on pace to be number 1 shortly. And
keep it
we're very proud of it.
Keep it simple, stupid. Do good work. Ask people to share the good work that you do.
That's right.
And then
good things will happen.
If you build it, they will come.
Good things will happen. Yeah.
Tyler, thanks for being a guest.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.